example 4, interpreting the slope of a line. So Tom has a part-time job. He recorded the hours he worked and his pay for 3 different days. Tom plotted this data on a grid, so here's the data that Tom plotted over here. You'll notice he's plotted time, the independent variable, on the x-axis, and pay, the dependent variable, on the y-axis. Okay, so just like you learned in Chapter 5. They have, looks like 3 questions they'd like us to answer. What is the slope of the line through these points? That's question A. The second question is, what does this slope represent? And question C, it's a 2-parter. It says, how can we use the answer in part B to determine how much Tom earned in 3.5 hours, and also how long it would take Tom to earn $30. Okay, so our solution is down here. So what they instruct us to do is, first of all, draw a line through the 3 points. Okay, choose 2 points on the line, and they suggest that we choose point P at 2 and 24, so that would represent that in 2 hours you earn $24, and at point Q at 4 and 28. Okay, so in 4 hours you earn $48. And they say use these 2 points. They suggest using these 2 points to determine the slope of the line. So just to fill you in, why have they chosen these 2 points? Well, first of all, those 2 points are exact. They're 2 of the points that he plotted. And they also occur right at specific intersections of the grid line. Okay, and that's really what you're looking for, is if you can find points that overlie the grid. So I'm going to write my rightmost point Q here, 4 and 48, and I'm going to write P, 2 and 24 underneath it. Okay. So they've given us the formula here that the slope of PQ is going to be given by y2 subtract y1 over x2 subtract x1. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to identify Q. Okay, I'm going to identify Q as point 2. And I'm going to identify P as point 1. And the next thing I'm going to do after that is identify that if Q is point 1, then 48 is going to be identified as y2, and 4 is going to be identified as x2. 24, since P is identified as point 1, 24 will be identified as y1, and 2 will be identified as x1. Okay, so it's just handy to label those when you're first getting started, because you got to get them into the formula in the right order. Okay, so our formula says take y2 and subtract y1 from it. So y2 is 48, y1 is 24. Okay? And then it says divide that by x2 subtract x1, so x2 is 4 and x1 is 2. So if we simplify our numerator, 48 subtract 24 is 24, and 4 subtract 2 is 2. And then if we do that division, 24 divided by 2 is 12. So the slope of that line is 12. Well, that's the answer to part A. Part B says, what does this slope represent? Okay, so in order to determine what the slope represents, we've got to look at how our axes are labeled. Excuse me. Our y-axis is labeled as pay in dollars per hour, and our x-axis is labeled in time, in hours. So the values of y are measured in dollars. The values of x are measured in hours. Okay? So the slope of the line is measured in, so the y values, they're the rise, so it's going to be dollars So we would interpret our slope of the line. Our slope of the number is 12, and that's $12 per hour. And usually when you see a rate of pay given, it's done this way, $12, and they use the slash to represent the division, so $12 per hour. So that's what that slope represents. It's his hourly rate of pay. So this is hourly rate of pay. Okay? So if we look down here, a little bit further down the page, question C says, use what we have in B, what we figured out B to represent the slope, to determine how much money Tom would earn in 3.5 hours. So we're going to take 3.5 hours and express that as a decimal. So 3.5 is equal to 3.5 hours. Okay? His hourly rate of pay is $12 per hour. So we'll take $12 per hour. Notice that our hours cancel out. You may remember canceling units when we were doing conversions between metric and imperial system and stuff like that. So the hours cancel out, and we're going to have 3.5 times $12. So 3 times 12 is 36, so we're going to have 36, and half of 12 is 6. So we're going to have $42. Okay? So in 3.5 hours, Tom could earn $42. The second part of this question says, if Tom earned $30, how long would he have worked? So we know that he earned $30. Okay, and we've got this rate of pay of $12 per hour. So what are we going to have to do with that to convert $30 into hours? Well, if we multiply it by 12 over 1, it's not going to help us out, okay? Because we're going to have $12 times $30, and it's not going to make any sense. But if we divide it, okay, by $12 per hour, okay, then we can see that how it makes sense by doing this. We take $30. When you multiply by a fraction, the rule is, when you divide by a fraction, the rule is to multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to take, and here you can see now the units that cancel out are the dollar signs, okay? And we've got 30 divided by 12 hours. So if you take 30 and divide it by 12, 2 times 12 is 24, so that's going to give you 2 hours, and you'll have a remainder of 6, so that's 6 over 12, which is 6 over 12 is a half, so 2.5 hours. So if Tom earned $30, that would mean that he had worked for 2.5 hours that day. All right? I think that is the last example. Yeah, it is. And Mr. Hebert even told me that I should have a nice slide here to tell you guys that this is the end of the lesson.